Hey everybody, and welcome to the first part of the Metal Gear Solid review series. Created in 1987 by Hideo Kojima, the Metal Gear series was a pivotal game in the stealth genre, as most games created during the time were side-scrolling shooters where bullets littered the screen. Kojima identified several Hollywood films as sources of inspiration for the storylines and gameplay, with the James Bond franchise providing the most inspiration. The game centered around a mercenary named Snake as he attempts to pull off several stealth missions in an effort to stop the various terrorist cells from misusing the namesake of the series, a walking battle tank codenamed Metal Gear. Metal Gear Solid was released during the early years of the original PlayStation back in 1998. I, however, didn't experience this classic until 2005. It's ironic since that's actually when this game takes place. Metal Gear Solid was my introduction to the Metal Gear series, even though there were games released before it. Metal Gear and Metal Gear Solid 2 Solid Snake were released in the late 80s for the MSX2, a computer gaming system exclusive to Japan. Metal Gear was released in North America on the NES, but it was heavily modified and it didn't really receive any support from Hideo Kojima. Metal Gear 2, on the other hand, was not ported over until after Metal Gear Solid. There was another game called Snake's Revenge, which serviced as the sequel to the Metal Gear version on the NES, but like the original, it wasn't developed by Kojima, and he was actually unaware of that game's existence for quite some time. Regardless, I was unaware of Metal Gear Solid until a friend of mine from school mentioned it in passing. He explained he was playing a game where he was a soldier trying to infiltrate a facility without being caught. And one day he mentioned that he was stuck at a certain boss fight and it was driving him crazy. I asked him what the boss was, and he replied by saying that it was a cyborg ninja. So naturally my interest piqued, though I couldn't really hunt this game down at the time. Trying to find a PlayStation game in 2005 and being able to afford it, considering I was in junior high, was slim to none. Anyway, my friend eventually let me borrow it one day near the end of the school year. I went home and began playing it, and I'm going to give you my initial reaction here, which was that I thought it was terrible. I was fine with the graphics and everything, that kind of stuff never really bothers me. I just didn't like the fixed camera angles, the controls for using the inventory, the stiff controls for moving Snake, and the difficulty of the boss fights, and how I kept getting caught by the soldiers, and how I kept getting shot to death every 2 seconds. I put the game off to the side with every intention of giving it back to my friend. However, shortly before I was going to, I decided to give it one last chance. And man, am I glad I did. I honestly don't know why, but on my second attempt, I just liked everything about the game so much more. I did spend more time getting used to the controls and the camera angles, and I think once I was able to finally get all used to it, everything just clicked. After all this, my friend eventually let me borrow Sons of Liberty and Snake Eater, and ironically, I played those within the 2 years before the fourth game came out, where I just bought my own copy at that point. So it kind of came full circle for me anyway, whereas the rest of the world had to wait years between sequels. I'm so glad my friend introduced me to the Metal Gear series, because it's now become one of my favorite video game franchises. But enough personal history, let's delve into the story. The plot of the first two games, which I'm going to sum up here a little quickly because then this video might be 4 hours long, revolves around Solid Snake, a new member of a special operations unit codenamed Foxhound. He's sent into a fortress in South Africa called Outer Heaven by a superior Big Boss to investigate a weapon named Metal Gear. While trying to reach the weapon, Snake manages to save one of his missing squad members, a man named Gray Fox. By the end, Snake reveals that Big Boss is the actual leader of Outer Heaven. The boss wants a place in the world where soldiers can fight for their own ideologies rather than what the government enforces onto them, and he believes that Metal Gear will ensure their victory. Snake proceeds to destroy Metal Gear along with Big Boss. In the sequel, Snake is retired from Foxhound, but is called out of retirement to rescue a biologist from a place called Zanzibar Land. Helping Snake out on this assignment is Colonel Campbell and a drill sergeant named McDonald Miller. While making progress on this mission, Snake learns that Big Boss actually survived their final encounter in the first game, though as to how he survived was left a mystery for almost close to 30 years, where a fifth game in the franchise ended up retconning that through probably one of the most confusing twists in video games that still kind of pisses me off, but that's down the road, we'll get there. And making matters worse, Snake's former friend and comrade, Gray Fox, has now joined Big Boss's side. Snake ends up completing his mission after killing Gray Fox and Big Boss, seemingly for good this time, before Snake retires to Alaska to live out his days in peace. And this is where the story of Metal Gear Solid starts. As I mentioned, it takes place in 2005 when renegade members of Foxhound cause an uprising on an island in Alaska known as Shadow Moses. Colonel Roy Campbell retrieves his old friend Solid Snake to come out of retirement to stop the members of Foxhound from launching a nuclear strike with the newly built Metal Gear Rex. The operation is a solo sneaking mission where Snake is on his own against the terrorist. However, backing him up on his codec radio are medical advisor Naomi Hunter, drill sergeant Master Miller, and mission data collector and breaking the fourth wall of saving your game, Mei Ling. Upon arriving, Snake learns that the terrorists want $1 billion in addition to the remains of Big Boss. So sorry, there's no shocking twist here that he's alive again in this game. Snake finds the first hostage, the DARPA chief Donald Anderson. Anderson explains to Snake that much of the stuff that's happening on the island is top secret and that no one should even know about the new Metal Gear. He also explains how to stop the nuclear strike. It involves using an override code that the president of Arms Tech knows. However, he too has been taken hostage. Before Snake can extract Anderson, he dies suddenly of a heart attack, though Snake remains skeptical of the whole situation. Snake is left out of the cell by a woman who was being kept in the cell next to Anderson, and after a short fight with the guard, she runs off. The Colonel reveals this woman to be his niece, Meryl Silverberg, and that Snake should go find her. Snake contacts Meryl by looking her codec number up on the back of the game case, and I'm dead serious on that. The game does not tell you anywhere in the game what Meryl's codec number is. You have to have the manual or the game's actual case, or the internet, which I guess wasn't an option back in '98, but now it is. While this might seem like a cool fourth wall breaking meta moment, it was actually a way to soft lock the game if you bootlegged it. Because if you'd pirated it, you wouldn't have the game box and you wouldn't know what Meryl's codex was. But again, the internet, so thank God for technology. Before Snake reaches her, he encounters the president of Arms Tech, Kenneth Baker, being tortured by another member of Foxhound Revolver Ocelot. After a brief fight with Snake, the battle is cut short, pun unintended, when a mysterious cyborg ninja shows up and cuts off Ocelot's right hand. Snake learns about the PAL override card from Baker, and he explains more about Rex before he too dies of a heart attack, further raising Snake's suspicions. Meryl tells Snake via codec to head to the Warhead Disposal Building so that they can meet up and so that Snake can find Metal Gear designer Dr. Hal Otacon Emmerich. Snake gets a little sidetracked as one of the other members of Foxhound, Vulcan Raven, tries to kill Snake with a tank. After disabling the tank, Snake makes his way into the facility, only to find a ton of dead soldiers lining the path to Otacon's office. Snake tries to speak to Otacon when the ninja shows up, challenging Snake to a fight. After the battle, Snake begins to realize that the ninja is actually his former friend Gray Fox, who he was thought to have killed in the last game. Otacon reveals that he had no idea Rex was going to be used as a nuclear device, and decides to help Snake on his mission to destroy it. Snake finally meets up with Meryl, who's disguised as an enemy soldier, but Snake figures out who she is from her, assets, I guess? Meryl then gives him the PAL code and they make their way to the lower levels, where Meryl is then possessed by Psycho Mantis. Mantis tries to get Meryl to kill Snake before attempting to do it himself. After killing Mantis, he opens up a door leading to the building where Rex is stored, revealing that he only joined in with the other members of Foxhound just to kill as many people as he could, and he doesn't care about their grand master plan. Snake and Meryl continue, but not for long, since as soon as they reach the underground passage, Sniper Wolf ambushes the pair and critically wounds Meryl in an attempt to bait Snake out. Snake doubles back to get a sniper rifle in order to battle Wolf. Though Snake defeats her upon returning to the passage after getting the rifle, Meryl's body is gone. Snake tries to head on alone, but is captured by the enemy soldiers. He's then brought before the leader of the terrorists, a man claiming to be called Liquid Snake, who reveals himself to be Snake's twin brother. Ocelot then proceeds to torture Snake to learn about the PAL card. Snake is then placed into a holding cell where he discovers the dead body of the DARPA chief, though it looks as though he's been dead for days and not hours. Snake escapes with the cell with a little help from Otacon, and he heads back to the two communication towers. However, at the top of the tower, Liquid is waiting inside a Hind-D helicopter and tries to blast Snake off the roof, causing Snake to rappel off the side. Snake fights his way up the second tower, and then fights Liquid head-on at the top, blasting the Hind-D out of the sky. Snake's victory is short-lived, however, because upon reaching the next snowfield, Sniper Wolf returns for a battle, and this time it ends with Snake killing her. This causes Otacon to become very angry with Snake, as Wolf had been somewhat nice to him during her time at the facility, and Otacon had become infatuated with her. At long last, we reach the hangar building, but we're stopped a final time by Raven. After mortally wounding him, Raven explains to Snake that the Anderson he met at the start of the game in the holding cell was actually another member of Foxhound, a master of disguise by the name of Decoy Octopus. He explains that the real DARPA chief had been killed by Ocelot before the start of Snake's mission. Snake pushes on and reaches Rex, and after waiting for Liquid and Ocelot to leave the control room, Snake tries to use the PAL card. However, throughout the game it's been hinted at there are 3 keys to activate this mechanic, but Snake has only ever had the one. Otacon then chimes in at this point to reveal that the PAL card is special, and it's made of a special reforming material that is affected by extreme heat and cold in addition to room temperature. So essentially Snake has all 3 keys the whole time. While Snake heads off to reform the keys, several codec conversations happen between Miller, Naomi, and Campbell. Miller checks in with Naomi's history and learns that she might actually be a spy and might be jeopardizing the mission. Eventually Naomi is taken off the mission and questioned. Snake meanwhile activates the card, which instead turns Rex on rather than deactivating it. It's then revealed that Master Miller on the codex was Liquid the whole time, as the real Master Miller was found dead in his home. Liquid then reveals that he and Snakes are the project of a Nope, ain't gonna say that. The Terrible Children, I'll just say it in English. A 1970s government program to clone Big Boss. He also then reveals to Snake the government's true reason for sending him out on the mission. Snake is unknowingly carrying a weaponized fox dye virus that will cause cardiac arrest in Foxhound members who have a certain genetic structure. This will allow the government to retrieve Rex undamaged. The virus will also end up killing Snake after the mission is completed. Liquid gets inside Rex and tries to kill Snake, but he's stopped by Gray Fox, who tries to hold him off. Fox tries to get Snake to finish Liquid and himself off after he forces the pilot seat open, but Snake cannot bring himself to kill his former friend again. So Liquid literally stamps Fox out, pun intended, and this time he tries to finish Snake, but Snake once again prevails and destroys Rex. What happens next is dependent on whether the player survived Ocelot's torture earlier in the game. If the player did not submit to the torture, then you get the canonical ending where you find Meryl on the ruins of Rex alive. If you did submit, you'd also find Meryl, but after the fight with Liquid here, you find out she's dead and you escape with Otacon. Also, it's kind of funny that we didn't know that the first thing was the canonical ending until almost, I think, like 10 years later, because Meryl isn't seen again until Metal Gear Solid 4. So, quite a long time to figure out what had actually happened in that first game now, isn't it? Regardless of this one aspect, Snake and Liquid fight on the roof of Rex, shirtless, because you know that's how these things happen. And it ends with Snake throwing Liquid off. Snake and Meryl then escape, only to be chased by Liquid, who's still alive in a Jeep. After the pair crash, Liquid tries one final time to shoot Snake, but the Fox Die triggers in Snake, but confuses him and Liquid because of their genetic makeup, and kills Liquid once and for all. Snake then receives a call from Naomi, who reveals that she planted the Fox Die in Snake as she wanted him to die since he killed her brother Frank Yeager, better known by his codename Gray Fox. She hated Snake and Foxhound since a Dr. Clark from Foxhound placed Frank in the cyborg ninja suit after they found him half dead after his fight with Snake in Zanzibar Land. She, however, feels differently now, as working with Snake painted him as a more sympathetic person. His attempts to save Meryl and his remorse for having to kill his own friend, and the fact that he doesn't seem to see himself as a hero despite all the killing he does. She regrets infecting him but says it's too late to remove it or cure it, and that one day the virus will kill him. Snake then escapes the island with Meryl and heads off into the sunset. Post-credit scene, it is then revealed that Ocelot was just playing sides the whole time and wasn't really working with Liquid, but rather the President of the United States, George Sears. He reveals to the President that he stole the technical plans for Metal Gear that they hope to now manufacture and sell on the black market. And then he proceeds to address the President as Solidus, the third clone of Big Boss. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. And mind you, I just tried to condense the plot to the most critical points. There are a lot of cutscenes in Metal Gear Solid, though honestly, you'll spend a bunch of your time staring at the codec screen watching the pictures of characters talk. And you might think that that's a little boring since you don't actually see the character models, but I can honestly say it's just as engaging to watch. The story itself is crazy, there's no denying that, but I still love it. The twists and turns and the big reveals all feel worth it. Like I said, I've never played the earlier games, but that didn't really affect my appreciation of this story. The game does a great job of explaining events from the past games and setting up the reveals that rely on knowledge from the past games. Hell, in I think the re-release in that Essentials Collection pack on PS2, there's actually a section that shows you like sum-up pages of what happened in the earlier games. I don't know if that's in the original PlayStation, it might be, but still, it's there for you to read, and it's only a couple of pages. Sure, you get more of a kick out of it if you've played the older games, but there was never a moment when I felt like I was being punished for not knowing something. The themes and characters are also really strong. There's a general stock message of humans relying on nuclear power and how that will be the death of us, what with all the real footage we see, and how we store our nukes in the real world, and how many there are. The game sometimes throws numbers out there or explains real world facts, at least at the time when the game was released, about how many nukes were stored in the world at that point.
Listen, have you ever seen a warehouse full of nuclear material?
No.
Drums and drums of nuclear waste stacked this high, as far as you can see. Because there's still no real way to dispose of the stuff.
So they just close the lid and try to pretend like it'll go away?
Essentially, yes. And they're not even doing a good job of storing it. Many of the drums are corroded, with nuclear waste seeping out of them.
Unbelievable.
Not only that, but several pounds of MUF are reported every year.
MUF?
It stands for material unaccounted for. It proves that there's a large and well-organized black market in nuclear materials. Furthermore, since the end of the Cold War, Russian nuclear engineers in particular are out of work with no way to turn.
The game also touches on the notion of how we idolize heroes in war. Snake has gone on 2 missions and saved the world, and so to people like Meryl, he's a legend, a hero, and an idol. But Snake doesn't see himself like that at all. He just sees himself as a cog in the system, doing what he's been ordered to do and killing, which is not something to be honored for.
None of that gene therapy like there is today. You guys were real heroes.
There are no heroes in war. All the heroes I know are either dead or in prison. One or the other.
But Snake, you're a hero, aren't you?
I'm just a man who's good at what he does. Killing. There's no winning or losing for a mercenary. The only winners in war are the people.
That's right, and you fight for the people.
I've never fought for anyone but myself. I've got no purpose in life, no ultimate goal.
Come on.
It's only when I'm cheating death on the battlefield. The only time I feel truly alive.
Meryl too is an interesting character arc in her relationship with Snake. It's very clear that she loves him, but Snake refuses to reciprocate, most likely because he feels like he's unlovable or that he's so used to violence and death, love is something that can't be given to him. And Snake is a great character with his tragic backstory and badass attitude. He presents a cool and slick attitude, and it's easy to see the James Bond connection in his character.
No. Wait. There was a man who said he was my father.
Where is he?
Dead. By my own hand.
Big Boss.
What? Big Boss? I had no idea.
There was no way you could. It happened in Zanzibar 6 years ago. Only Snake and I know the real truth of what happened there.
So, is it true? Was Big Boss really your father?
That's what he said. That's all I know.
And you were able to kill him, knowing that?
Yup,
How?
he wanted it. Besides, some people just need killing.
Several other characters have tragic backstories in depth that you might not expect in a game like this. I mentioned how Snake kills all the Foxhound members, but if you think they're all just mustache-twirling one-note villains, you'd be wrong. We learn a little bit about each one after they die, but even with the smallest bit of info, it makes the characters really stand out than just the generic placeholder for boss fights. For example, Mantis reveals that when he was young, he read his father's mind by accident, and learned that he hated him because he caused his wife to die in childbirth.
I saw nothing but disgust and hatred for me in his heart. My mother died in childbirth, and he despised me for it. I thought my father was going to kill me. That's when my future disappeared. I lost my past as well. When I came to, the village was engulfed in flames.
Are you saying that you burned your village down to bury your past?
I see that you have suffered the same trauma.
You almost feel sorry for half the villains. Even Liquid is to be pitied because he believes that he was cloned with the recessive genes from Big Boss while Snake got all the dominant ones.
You're fine. You got all the old man's dominant genes. I got the flawed recessive genes. Everything was done so that you would be the greatest of his children. The only reason I exist is so they could create you.
I was the favorite, huh?
That's right. I'm just the leftovers of what they used to make you. Can you understand what it's like to know that you're garbage since the day you were born? But I'm the one Father chose.
So that's why you're so obsessed with Big Boss. Some warped kind of love.
Love? It's hate! He always told me I was inferior, and now I'll have my revenge!
There's also a ton of cutscenes that you might miss out on. If you use the codec at certain points and pick certain characters to talk to, you get different conversations. Asking for help during a boss fight or just calling when you enter a new area can trigger certain codec scenes that won't trigger unless you make the call. These optional conversations give you more insight to your team members and will help flesh out their overall characters. Overall, the story of Metal Gear Solid is just damn awesome. It moves at a quick pace, it has great drama and plot twists, and most importantly, great characters. Honestly, if the characters weren't as interesting or the villains were more stereotypical of the we are evil and we're gonna just blow up the world type, I'm not sure the plot would have worked. It would have been serviceable at best. Also, I found this plot to be rather simplistic in scope compared to what the sequels will focus on, but I'll address that later. It's a simple stop the bad guys plot with just enough shocking twists to keep everything level-headed. Whereas the next game kind of takes things a bit too far on the shocking twist in its final act thing, but again, that's for later. So I think it's time to get to the actual gameplay, don't you think? Metal Gear Solid is a stealth game, which means that the general goal is to make it through the entire game without getting caught. Getting caught is not always a death sentence, though the game doesn't make it easy if you do. If you alert the guards, they will hunt you down, and the only way to stop contact is to hide. Guards usually come running in guns blazing, and while you can fire back with your own little mini arsenal, it's kinda best not to. While you have your own arsenal, it's hard to accurately aim and quickly take out guys. Thankfully, there are other ways of getting around enemies. Snake can crouch behind objects, use walls to see what's around the next corner, crawl under desks and other spaces, knock on walls to alert the guards, or engage in hand-to-hand combat to take out enemies. Making the sneaking easier to an extent is the items that you can pick up as you progress. If you explore around the facility, you can find thermal goggles, a mine detector, both of which can help you get past laser tripwires or minefields later in the game. It's a great feeling of searching around and finding a cool new item to help you out. The other aspect to helping here is the Soliton radar, which shows enemies and security cameras on the map in the corner of the screen, but more importantly it shows you their field of vision. Using this radar is crucial in not triggering alarms and summoning soldiers. Snake can also pick up quite a few weapons during his mission. You start off with just a small pistol, but the arsenal grows to contain a remote-controlled missile launcher, Stinger missiles, a machine gun, C4, and even a sniper rifle. There are also different types of grenades, such as chaff and stun. Chaff grenades are a great way to disable the security cameras, while the stun grenades are good to make enemy soldiers get stunned for a few seconds if you want to take them out. However, it's not all hiding and avoiding confrontation. Metal Gear Solid eventually has you engaging in some pretty epic boss fights. Here it's all about avoiding damage and taking shots when you have the chance. The boss battles are quite diverse. There's a gun battle in a room rigged with C4, a battle with a tank as I mentioned, and the Hind D helicopter. The sniper battles out in the snow are really cool, and there's even one fight that breaks the fourth wall. That would be the Mantis fight. It's by far not one of just the coolest fights in this game, but probably in all of gaming. The fight starts off with Mantis trying to prove he has psychic powers by trying to move your controller and reading your past. So he triggers the rumble in the controller to get it to move, and then he reads your memory card and mentions other Konami games that might be saved onto the system. Guess he'd be out of luck if he tried to read any current Konami games unless it's a damn pachinko machine. I'm not letting that go. After that, the fight begins and you seemingly can't hit him. Finally, Colonel Campbell will chime in on the codec and mention that you should switch the PS1 controller into the second controller port because he's reading your mind and he won't know how to do that if you plug it into the second port. It sounds crazy that this could be a mechanic in a game, and it might seem a little unfair, but the game is telling you that after you fail for a few seconds. I don't necessarily know if you have to die in this fight for that to trigger, but I think if you call him, he'll eventually mention this. It's just crazy to think that this is a mechanic in a PS1 game. The sniper fights with Wolf are also really fun because they take place in open areas. You can only attack with the sniper rifle and you need to steady your aim to take the shots, but more importantly, you have to find her. There's a great deal of tension when you ready your scope and you don't see her, and you gotta figure out where she's hiding, all while hoping the fact that she can't see you and take her shot. I guess the negative to the boss fights is that they start off kinda hard and only get more challenging. Also the fact that the game starts Snake off with a very minimal bar of health, and the game kicks off with two really major boss fights that can really make your health bar go down to zero fast. The Ocelot fight and the tank fight can get you a bit frustrated in that regards. Thankfully you gain health upgrades after each fight, so the later bosses become a lot more manageable. And that's really it to the gameplay. I think it's kind of funny that it took me way longer to address the plot of this game than the actual gameplay. Like I said, Metal Gear Solid is more of a movie than a game, but the gameplay that's here is a ton of fun. And there's a great sense of accomplishment when you make it through an area the first time without triggering an alarm. Even when you trigger an alarm, you might want to start the area over again just to try another go at it. You also get ranked after the playthrough depending on how many times you got caught, and there's a reward should you beat the game and not get caught, prompting a second playthrough. The bosses are challenging and make you think about the best way to attack them and then to avoid their attacks, and some of the boss fights are really creative, making them some of the most memorable moments of the game. The presentation is another strong spot for the game. While the graphics look like nothing today, they were considered quite striking for the time. The character models are blocky and they don't really have clear facial features, and their heads sort of bob to illustrate that they're talking. However, the writing and the voice acting is so strong that it makes up for this shortcoming, even years later. As I mentioned, most of the cutscenes take place in the codec, so there are art stills for the characters here, and these actually have different pictures to represent when a character is expressing a different emotion. The voice acting is also top-notch across the board. David Hayter begins his legendary run voicing Snake here, and honestly, I can't picture anyone else doing that voice. It's a calm, reassuring voice with just a hint of badass. Other standouts in the cast are Jennifer Hale as Naomi, Paul Eating as Campbell, Cam Clark as Liquid, Patrick Zimmerman as Ocelot, and Christopher Randolph as Otacon. They all give a great amount of sincerity and weight to their performances that really make you feel for them. And big props to Hale and Eating, as we never even see those characters outside of codex calls. It's kind of funny because around this time gaming voice acting was kind of all over the place with performances that ranged from cringy to terrible and dialogue that was pretty much right up there to boot. So I think Metal Gear Solid should be commended for a great job that both the cast and the writing team did. The music is also another strong point. Most of the music was created by several in-house composers at Konami, who I guess now are making music for pachinko machines. I told you I'm not letting it go. And they gave the game a strange synthetic feel with orchestrated-like elements incorporated into the cutscenes. The music can also create a feeling of solidarity with a hint of foreboding. It makes you feel like you're in a place that you shouldn't be. And then sometimes the music is loud and nerve-twitching as when you get caught or when you enter a boss fight, and it creates an atmosphere of action and chaos. I guess I should also mention the remake of this game for the GameCube that came out in 2004 called The Twin Snakes. This game was recreated using the template found in the sequel Metal Gear Solid 2. Story-wise, everything plays out the same, it's just presented in a much clearer manner thanks to the power of the GameCube. The game retains the overhead camera, but it introduced the ability to shoot in first person. This makes a few fights from the original a bit easier thanks to the new perspective. Honestly, if you're more used to the second or third Metal Gear Solid titles, and for whatever reason you just can't stomach the graphics of the PS1 original, then you should give this version a shot. It's interesting to see the Metal Gear Solid story play out with the enhancements found from the sequels. So overall, what do I think of Metal Gear Solid? I think it's nothing short of an amazing and landmark title for both the stealth genre and video games in general. It brought the stealth mechanics of the original into 3D, while the game crafted the template for story-driven cutscene-heavy games. There might not be a lot to Metal Gear Solid's gameplay, but the addictive nature of figuring out ways around your enemies and trying to get through the hardest areas undetected is a joy. It's not a perfect experience, as you're likely to die a lot your first time through and bosses will cut you to shreds, but the game gives you the tools to avoid combat, and trial and error reveal the best way to tackle bosses. Like I said at the start, I hated the game when I first played it. I disliked the controls and I felt it was punishing me too much. But then everything just clicked, and now it's one of my favorite games ever. Metal Gear Solid can be a tough game to recommend if you're not a fan of the stealth genre. If you like running and gunning, then this might not be for you. However, if you're willing to struggle in the opening hours, I can assure you that the game becomes so much more worth it to play, and the story alone will keep you interested, and it's worth it to see it to its conclusion. So make sure you come back next time when the Metal Gear Solid review series continues as we look at the sequel, Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty. Thanks for watching.